Hey, what's up, guys? It's John Dominique, the Soul Proponent. Today, I want to talk about like the ambiguous, undefined nature of spiritual awakening, of the soul, of the process of self-realization. A lot of people want me to like define what spiritual awakening is, and I don't think there's one definition, to be honest with you. The reason that is because spiritual awakening defines us, not the other way around. It's very difficult to put a definition on it because it's an ongoing process that doesn't really end. So it's not like we can put a definition on it and concretize it. So one important thing I want to talk about is, to see the unconscious reason that we're wanting to put a definition to it. So a lot of times we can find that the identity is trying to get some type of semblance of control about the whole thing, about the whole situation. And on an unconscious level, the need to define something is a way to like come up with a ground, a baseline, some type of security or foundation. That's something we can kind of hang on to. And that's kind of, in a subtle way, it's a way that we can possibly increase our attachments, which actually makes things worse on the process. So we need to be very careful and examine our motivations when we want to try to find out what a definition of spiritual awakening is. I mean, loosely speaking, it's just like, enlightenment, liberation, words like that. And people are always like, well, that's so ambiguous, it's so up in the air, it's like undefined. And yes, that's true, but that's one thing, that's kind of one way we have to look at it, that there is no definition. It's going to actually define us. We're not going to define it. It's the other way around. Again, the ego wants to stay in control and put it in a box and make it neat and make it into an idea of what it thinks what it wants. It's like it has these expectations. But the truth is, the process is, there's no control over it. We don't have any type of say over how it happens, how it works. And a lot of people don't want to deal with that. People tend to not want to deal with the vulnerability. They want to stay in control at all times. And, there's resistances to that ambiguous nature of the process. So, that's a beginning point. I tell people, well, to get an idea, to get a flavor of what it's like for spiritual awakening, it's like you can begin with the practice of non-attachment, and then apply the practice of non-attachment to the practice of non-attachment. And it gets a little tricky because no one knows what that's like. No one knows how to begin, how to do that. And my suggestion is that like you would have to be ready. You'd have to come to a place in your life where you've tried everything and nothing works, and then the realization is that trying, that efforting is actually a barrier. It's part of the struggle. It's part of the problem. The identity itself is part of the problem. It's in the way. So it's a deductive process, deconstructing process of this identity, peeling back layers of the identity to see what's really there, to reveal what's there. And the revealing part is where people get shaky because it erases the familiar mechanisms, the familiar structures of the identity. Just to have an identity, it challenges that survival instinct. So a lot of times on an unconscious level, we're hanging on to this idea of who we think we are. And without this idea of who we think we are, there's nothing left. It feels like life is worthless. There's no value in anything. So there's an attachment there. And we have to challenge that attachment and start loosening just a little bit. There's no rules to this. It's not like there's an instruction booklet, but there are guidelines that could be helpful. There are examples that you could maybe use as a template for your own awakening. So it's very ambiguous, and that's part of the problem. No one knows how to do it, and no one knows where to go to find out how to do it. And when people hear about it, they get real skeptical, like, oh, I've never heard anything about this before. How come there's no information about this, and who do I trust, type of thing. And that's part of the issue, because that identity has to have some type of, granted, we need to, on the path, we need to know that the people who are instructing us are not, trying to swindle us. I mean, there's a level of doing our own research, of finding out, this person that we're getting the information from. We need to find out who they are, what they're doing, what their experience has been. It's a process of discovery, basically. But again, it's ambiguous, and there's very little knowledge around that would actually guide us on this path. It's very dangerous. Nobody wants to do it. It's the cost is really part of the barrier, the block, the resistance. Nobody wants to challenge their survival instincts. Nobody wants to be made like they're gonna die, that they're gonna lose their identity, that they have no control, that there's no future, there's no past, there's no security, there's nothing to stand on, there's no identity, there's nothing to look forward to, there's no hopes, there's no fears, there's no desires. That's a state that most people don't tolerate very well. I mean, you might be able to tolerate it for maybe 1 minute or so if you're lucky, but for the most part, you're not going to go around living your life like that in the long run overall. Most people, we need to see that resistance, and because that's where it begins. We need to see how we're resisting. It's a very ambiguous process, as I said, and that's kind of the crux of my message today, that spiritual awakening is always unfolding. It's a process that we don't have much control over, and to want to define the terms and the definitions, to put parameters on it, to set guidelines, to set expectations, these type of things, these are all things that are going to actually send us backwards on a path, because there's more attachment, it's more grabbing, it's more striving, it's more efforting, and the path is the reverse. It's to let go, it's to peel back, it's to erase the structures, the scaffolding that we're holding on to, the conditioning that we've been brought up with, the civilization process that we grew up with as children. Like, it's deconstruct all of that to reveal the emptiness of what's there. That's the beginning, the emptiness. And people start to feel that emptiness, they get shaky, they get dizzy, there's no ground, and then they have no orientation. They feel like that's a very scary thing to go through, but that's part of the path, and we kind of have to allow that, have an environment that will allow us to do that without any judgment. So that's the crux of my message, that this process is very ambiguous, it's abstract, and most people don't want to have anything to do with it, because there's always something more important, basically, and that the cost of going on the path is too great for most people. They'll only go partly, and then they'll turn their backs on it, which is indicative of how Jesus' disciples turned their backs on Jesus when he was arrested. That's kind of what that points to. It's our own turning our backs to the truth. So just let me know if you have any questions, comments, like my video, subscribe, all that good stuff. John Dominique, the Soul Proponent.